In the Wii era, Miis were everywhere, from Wii Sports, Wii Fit, even Mario Kart. They were, for a while, some of Nintendo's most iconic characters. But in the decade that followed, Miis gradually faded into the background. For instance, the Mii Maker on the Nintendo Switch is buried away in the settings, and it has no upbeat music or playful animations. But the real nail in the coffin came in 2022. After almost a decade since the last Wii Sports game, Nintendo announced a brand new title, Nintendo Switch Sports. Except the Miis were nowhere to be found in the game's trailer, instead replaced with these guys called Sportsmates. People really hated the Sportsmates, and yet the characters seemed ready to replace the Miis. So in this video, I want to look at what happened behind the scenes. We'll uncover why Nintendo stopped featuring Miis in their games, why Switch Sports replaced Miis with the unpopular Sportsmates, and how the Miis may still have a bright future ahead of them. Here's why Nintendo almost got rid of Miis. Part 1. The Golden Age of Miis. To understand why Nintendo phased out the Miis, we need to look back at why they were created in the first place. Because the Miis weren't just regular game characters like Mario or Link, they were avatars meant to represent the player across a variety of different games. According to Hisashi Nogami, director of the Wii's Mii channel, we always had the intention of allowing the characters created for one game to appear as guests in other games. I'm hoping that more and more Mii-compatible software will be developed. And so, Nintendo pushed for Miis to be included in all sorts of games on the Wii. When Mario Kart Wii was early in development, the team even considered having only Miis available at the start, with Mario characters getting unlocked as you kept playing. Shigeru Miyamoto, the game's producer, joked, "Maybe we should have released it as Mii Kart instead. We could have surprised everyone by having Mario show up halfway through as a hidden character." Now that's a pretty radical suggestion. In games like Super Mario Galaxy, the player's save file is represented by a Mii-shaped planet, and it wasn't just Nintendo's own games. Across titles like Go Vacation, We Love Golf, even FIFA, Miis played an active role. In fact, there are 81 Wii games featuring the Miis, and many of them weren't developed by Nintendo at all. Hisashi Nogami said in an interview, "As long as the third-party developers make the games compatible with the Mii system, these characters will also be able to appear in the games they produce." Of course, if Miis were to represent players, they had to be treated with some care. When Nintendo told the Mario Party developers that their next project would be a party game featuring Miis, the team was initially excited, but it wasn't long before they realized how troublesome this task would be. The game's producer, Hiroshi Sato, explained in an interview, "Mii characters are a representation of the player. It's important to pay strict attention not to do anything that would make the players feel uncomfortable, so there are rules about the usage of Mii characters." These rules were later leaked online and contain snippets such as, "Do not allow Mii characters to perform acts of violence that would result in blood, dismemberment, or damage to a part of the Mii character's body." Yeah, that sounds like a pretty good rule to have, I think. So on the Wii, the Miis weren't like any other character. They were an avatar of the player themselves, and they'd show up across all kinds of Wii software. Satoru Iwata, then Nintendo president, said in an interview at the time that Nintendo valued Miis as highly as Mario himself. And so, when Nintendo developed their next home console, the Wii U, it only made sense to keep Miis at the center of the experience. On the console's home screen, Miis from players around the world gather and chat. And Nintendo created their own social media platform called Miiverse that put Miis at the front and center. Unfortunately, the Wii U did not end up as successful as the Wii. In fact, it was an infamous flop. There were many things at fault: the confusing name, the terrible marketing, the lack of great games. But another big issue was the user interface. The Wii U was slow, really slow in fact. It took minutes to turn on, another minute to boot up a game, 30 seconds to return to the home screen, and, well, all those Miis standing around can't exactly have helped. So, for their next console, Nintendo took a complete 180, and spoiler alert, this wasn't good news for the Miis. Part 2. The Decline of Miis. When Nintendo began work on the Nintendo Switch, one of the big changes the company wanted to make was to the operating system. While the home screens of the 3DS, Wii and Wii U had been fun, full of quirky animations and 3D graphics, this time round, the focus was on function. The Switch should be quick to boot up, quick to load games, quick to use in general. In fact, Nintendo's UI designers had the original NES as a goal, where you'd just turn on the console and the game would start running. To pull this off, everything that wasn't strictly necessary was cut. There'd be no background music, games wouldn't have animated 3D logos, but rather simple square icons. In fact, the whole home menu fits in less than 200 kilobytes. That's unbelievably tiny, and it means the home screen loads in an instant. And on the design front, the games were put front and center. Nintendo's UI designers considered having big, colourful icons for the settings, eShop and gallery, but they ended up making those icons small and less colourful so that the actual games would stand out better. And in this process, Miis were relegated to the background too. Unlike on the Wii and 3DS, where the Mii Maker is front and center on the home screen, on the Switch, it's instead tucked away deep in the settings. It's no longer a big focus, and that's because it's not a game. Games were the focus for the Switch. But it wasn't just the menus and home screen. Back on the Wii, developers were encouraged to use Miis in all kinds of games. Wii Party, for instance, was created at Nintendo's suggestion. But on the Switch, all of that changed. In a press release, the company said, Mii characters can be used to represent a user profile, but are not required. Mii characters can still be used in games if developers choose to include them. And this bears out in the Switch's software library. No longer are Miis used to represent players' save files in Super Mario Odyssey, nor are there a huge set of third-party games featuring the Miis. Just going by the numbers, on the Wii, 81 games included Miis. On the Switch, it's just 13. There are still Mii-based games, Miitopia or Go Vacation, for instance, but they're the exception, not the rule. However, the biggest nail in the coffin of Miis came in 2022, when Nintendo showed off a set of brand new avatars. Avatars that seemed ready to replace the Miis once and for all. Part 3. Sports without Miis. When you think of Miis, one of the first games that comes to mind is Wii Sports. Playing tennis against Miis of your friends and family was such a universal experience. And so, in 2022, when Nintendo revealed the latest game in the series, Switch Sports, the very first thing that stood out was the lack of Miis. Instead, the stars of the show are these guys, the Sportsmates. In fact, Switch Sports was in development for a really long time, from the early days of the Switch. But the development team really struggled with how to make their game stand out from the original Wii Sports and Wii Sports Resort. The game's director, Yoshikazu Yamashita, said in an interview, "We felt that we had done all we could. I honestly felt that there weren't any sports left to be added." And so the team focused on making Switch Sports feel totally distinct from previous Wii Sports titles. They gave the sports a lot of depth and complexity, even added button controls, and considered replacing Miis with new player characters. But when others at Nintendo tried playing this prototype, they really didn't like it. Yes, the game felt new and different, but not in a good way. The idea of Wii Sports was that anyone from kids to pensioners could pick it up and play. And Switch Sports in its current form was far too complicated. And so, almost all of those wacky experimental ideas were dropped from the game. Button controls were gone, the sports would be simple, pick up and play. But there was one idea that remained, replacing the Miis. You see, using Miis in Switch Sports wasn't actually as simple as it might sound. Yamashita explained, "The Mii characters in Wii Sports didn't have arms, the sphere was considered a hand. It did not look unnatural because of the lower screen resolution at the time, but I thought it would be difficult to incorporate it into today's game consoles. Yes, the team could just add arms, many later Wii games did. But they instead decided to forge ahead with something new. So, the team brainstormed some new character ideas. There was a university sports team with the idea of focusing on the rivalry between the teams. But the idea they liked best was this: robot characters. According to art director Junji Mori, the player is inside the robot, but it is the robot that moves when you swing the Joy-Con controller. The robot is the one doing the bowling. Not only did they draw up concept art, they even built a robot bowling prototype. But when the team tried playing, they found using robots made the game just feel complicated. And so in the end, they settled on a more conventional set of characters, the Sportsmates. And the team took these characters and ran with them. Compared to the 30 different character animations that Miis used in Wii Sports, in Switch Sports, the Sportsmates have over 650 different animations for walking, running, hitting the ball forehand, backhand, and so on. Adding in arms and hands looked better, but it certainly added a lot of extra work too. And there was also fashion. In this game, you can dress your avatar up in all sorts of outfits, which are unlocked by playing online. Art director Mori said in an interview, "There are many different items, and we worked pretty hard on this part. We hope you will take note of the unique and extensive range of outfits available." But as those who've played Switch Sports will know, in the end, the team did add in the option to play as a Mii. And in theory, that's nice, but the execution feels pretty half-hearted. Rather than feeling like you're playing as a Mii, it's more like a sportsmate wearing a Mii head mask. It's a bit uncanny, I think. It's pretty clear, playing Switch Sports, that the team were all in on Sportsmates. The Miis were an afterthought. So, with a modern, flashy new replacement lined up, it certainly felt in 2022 like this could be the end of the Miis. If even the Wii Sports series was relegating these characters to an options menu, where did that leave Nintendo's other games? Well, it turns out this was not, in fact, the end for the Miis, because another team inside Nintendo was working on the Mii's big comeback. Part 4: The Return of Miis. In 2017, a small group of developers at Nintendo began work on what would become Tomodachi Life: Living the Dream. After finishing work on the mobile game Miitomo, series producer Yoshio Sakamoto told his team, "There's so much that I want my Mii characters to experience, but there's nothing more I can do for them." and so they decided to make a new Tomodachi entry, one which really focused on bringing Miis to life like they'd not been able to do in past titles. Previously, Miis had appeared in set locations across the game's island setting, but thanks to the more powerful Switch system, this time round, the Miis would roam around the island freely. They'd be much more fleshed out than ever before. But getting the Miis right wasn't easy. According to director Ryutaro Takahashi, when we decided to create a new Tomodachi Life game, we wanted to make Mii characters' visuals more appealing, in line with the current generation of game consoles. But after adding all sorts of new elements to the Mii characters, something began to feel off. The Miis ended up looking too detailed, too lifelike almost. The idea of a Mii is to be a simplified caricature of the player, not a direct recreation of their actual face. Just keep adding more and more detail, and you'd end up with something like the Sportsmates from Switch Sports. Instead, for Tomodachi Life, the team decided to go in the complete opposite direction, simple and stylized. According to art director Daisuke Kageyama, we updated their appearance based on a simple, anime-inspired toon style, allowing players to immerse themselves in the drama between Mii characters in cutscenes, for example. In fact, after redesigning the Miis, the team realized that this toon style closely matched the Miis seen on the original Tomodachi Collection game box. It was just a coincidence, but it solidified the fact that Miis are better when they're kept simple, because that simplicity lets players fill in the gaps with their imaginations. The animations too were kept intentionally simple. Art director Kageyama explained, "I often discussed with the animation staff members as to whether it was too realistic. Whenever movements look too realistic and cool, it stops being Mii-like. We shaped the Mii characters' movements through trial and error, deliberately omitting the wind-up motions that usually serve to make movements appear smoother, and adding more bold, memorable movements." In the end, the Miis of Tomodachi Life Living the Dream feel pretty perfect to me. They retain that classic Mii essence, and the flat cell shading looks great. But the team also added lots of new face parts and hairstyles, which meant that players could better create Miis that looked like themselves. So that really leaves us the question of what the future looks like for Miis. It's pretty clear that Nintendo has no intention of returning to the days of the Wii and 3DS, when Miis popped up anywhere and everywhere across Nintendo's games. But at the same time, I don't think this is the end of Miis. They're the face of one of Nintendo's biggest games of the year, for one. And while Nintendo could have got rid of the Mii Maker with Switch 2, they instead kept it, still tucked away in the settings. I think Nintendo's own words are the best clue to the future of Miis. Mii characters can still be used in games if developers choose to include them. If the teams behind games like Miitopia and Tomodachi Life want to feature Miis at the front and center, they can do so. If they instead want to come up with new avatars, like with Switch Sports, that's also up to them. So, in the late 2000s, Miis may have been as famous as Mario, but now they're more like Pikmin, important to the company, but on a slightly lower level. And that's okay, not every game actually benefits from having Miis shoehorned in. But at the same time, I'm glad that within Nintendo, there are still developers who don't just want to include Miis in their games, but want to evolve them, level up the Miis for the next generation of Nintendo games. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Videos like these are made possible thanks to the support of my patrons, including Arthur Nicole, Brett Profit, Cyprian Eov, Daryl Jero, Duran, Fresh Poetic, Jim Gilsonen, Kieran Chan, Kinugu, Lucas Little, May I, Michael Gunter, Robinstick, Skater Pie, and Thomas Söderlund.